Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Good evening. Welcome to the Congressional District 4 Candidate Forum. I'm Heidi Pelletier. I have the pleasure of serving as the Chief Development Officer at the Yakima Valley Community Foundation, and I'm very excited to be here tonight as a co-moderator of tonight's panel.
Hello, my name is Preston Tucker. I am the president of the Washington Youth Alliance Yakima chapter. Tonight's forum, wrong one. So if you guys could all stand and remove your hats for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Tonight's forum would not have been possible without the cooperation of dedicated people from Washington Youth Alliance, Yakima Indivisible, the League of Women Voters of Yakima County, and the Fruitvale Grange. Please join me in an applause for these organizations. And just a quick mention, Matt Bahunke he called a few hours ago and he got double booked for the night, so unfortunately he will be on your programs, but he will not be here tonight answering questions. Okay, none of that. We don't need it. As noted in the programs, the four sponsoring organizations have committed to providing a nonpartisan event. To keep things as neutral as possible, we ask that you refrain from displaying any visible support, such as hats or buttons or posters. There will not be questions from the audience during the Q&A. However, there will be a reception in the adjacent room after the forum where you can interact with candidates. Also, taking photos is allowed, but we ask you to not record the forum. The sponsoring organizations have arranged for the forum to be recorded, and the recording will be available on the Yakima Indivisible website within the next few days. I also forgot to mention, please no applause or booing or cheering at anything the candidates say. It was important to the sponsoring organizations to hold this forum before the primary elections because Washington State has a top two primary system. This means all candidates appear on the same ballot, and the two candidates who receive the most votes move on to the general election, regardless of party or no party affiliation. We hope responses from the candidates tonight will help you with your voting decision. We also hope you and your family and friends get reminded to vote in the primary election. You should receive your primary ballot by July 17th, and it must be deposited in the official ballot box or postmarked by August 4th. Your program has also a QR code where you can register to vote or verify and update your voter registration. Your vote does matter. Now, the bathrooms are right here and right here.
Before we begin the question and answer, the candidates received a set of rules to which they have all agreed. These rules include refraining from making accusation, charges, or attacks of a personal nature that are irrelevant to the office or issues pertaining to the office, not interrupting or talking over another candidate's allotted time for answering questions, adhering to their allotted amount of time for answering questions, not providing campaign or political party materials, not wearing campaign or political party attire during this forum, not recording the forum, and last but not least, the moderators will enforce all rules and time limits. The moderators may interrupt any participants to enforce the rules and format requirements. The moderator may also take as much time as necessary to explain if a rule has been violated. The questions being asked tonight were agreed on by the sponsoring organization committee members. The candidates did not receive the questions in advance, but were provided with a list of topics that would likely be addressed in tonight's forum. The candidates' names were randomly selected and they are seated in the order in which they were selected. The opportunity to respond first will rotate. Let's welcome tonight's District 4 candidates. First we have John Duresky, Favian Valencia, Elpidia Saaverdra, Jerrod Sessler, John Hughs, Devin Poore, and Jacek Kobiesa. This is the one and the final time that we ask for your applause and to thank our candidates for putting their names in the hat and running for elected office. A few logistics of how this is going to happen. Candidates, the first 4 or 5 questions will have 90-second response time. There are 2 timers. Can I see our timers? They're going to be in the back there. They have a yellow card that they will hold up when you have 15 seconds remaining, and a red card when your time has expired. Preston and I reserve the right to let you complete a statement at the 90-second mark. If you complete your response before the 90 seconds are up, we will confirm your answer is complete and move on to the next candidate. You may not reclaim any time once you have confirmed your answer is complete. I'm going to step away from this speaker here. There will also be a series of yes/no questions for which you will have double-sided cards. One side states yes, and the other side states no. For these questions, you will have 3 seconds to respond by holding up the side of your card facing the audience. You may also choose to not respond and leave your card down for a question. At the end of all questions, you will have 1 minute for closing statements. Again, the timers will use the yellow flag when you have 15 seconds remaining and the red flag when your time is expired. You may choose to stand or remain seated when it is your turn to respond. Do you have any questions before we begin? Yes, we'll pass those out after the first 4 or 5 questions. So we're going to go ahead and start with the first question. And John, you're going to be the first to respond, and then we're just going to pass the microphone down. So the first question, according to an April 2026 Gallup poll, public sentiment towards the current Congress is tied for its all-time low. Only 10% of Americans approve of the job that Congress is doing. Why do you think this is the case, and what would you do to reverse this trend?
Check. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the question. Thank you to all of you for being here. It is an absolute pleasure to have this opportunity to speak to all of you about these issues. Real briefly, at the very beginning of my campaign, I signed a pledge called Take Back Congress. It has 5 parts. Those parts are banning stock trading by sitting congressmen, overturning Citizens United, banning lobbying by departing congressmen, and an enforceable code of ethics for the Supreme Court, and finally, term limits. The reason that I signed that pledge is the exact answer to that question. Because we see the damage that has been done by Congress, and we see that they are no longer serving your interest. And we believe the pledge is our way of turning Congress back to working for you instead of working for the billionaires and the lobbyists. Thank you very much.
I don't always agree with Mr. Duresky, but in this case I do. So besides what he just said, so I agree that right now Citizens United is really making it so that our vote is diluted, and in some cases it doesn't make as much of a difference as it should. So that's one thing. Another statistic that I would add is that about 49% of the people in our country identify as independents. And I believe that's because, and I'm an independent, I'm running as an independent. I believe that's because we are tired of not being listened to. So what happens is that when you're a Democrat or a Republican, you take your talking points from a political boss in DC that tells you this is what your people need, and don't question it, don't step outside of the box, don't get out of line, and that makes it so that they don't actually listen to you, the people that we're serving. As an independent, one of the challenges is that I don't have the funding or the resources. I don't have the backing of any party, but it's actually a good thing, because I've had to start from the beginning. I've had hundreds of people sign up to volunteer for me, and I've done it literally talking to people. I've been molding my platform based on the conversations that I've had with some of you, and I'm looking forward to having more of those conversations, and thank you for being here.
Hello, everyone. Who elects our officials? It's really easy to blame the people that are the elected officials, right? But at the end of the day, the power lies in our hands. Many Americans have forgotten the country that they live in. They're electing people that whose interest is not in the American people. They're electing officials that are dictated to through backdoor deals or lobbyists or companies that have a lot of money. And those are the ones that are leading this country. At the end of the day, if we want to see change not only in Congress, but in the House and also the presidency, we need to make sure that we are electing people that are vested in taking care of Americans, taking care of this country, taking care of what we value first, not being sold to other organizations or companies or special interest groups that are basically charging in the same direction. So many times I hear residents complain, why do those people do what they do, or why are they voting the way they are? Well, it's because as residents, as voters, we didn't do our work. We know what the problems are in government, and we can fix it by electing different types of candidates. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. I'll say that the answer to this question fundamentally is really one of the main reasons why I'm running for Congress, and that is I'm tired of being ripped off by my government. And that, as you just heard from some of these other candidates, some very good things that are wrong, including who we're electing. So if you think about our government, what is our government if you take away all the elected? It's nothing, right? And so the people that we are electing are the people that make up the government. They're the ones that make the decisions for us that impact our lives, either positive or negative. And so we have to take better care with the people that we're electing. And even right now in this race, just like in most of these races, unfortunately, it's a money race. And the people that have the most money tend to be the ones that you hear the most of. And I'm very proud of all of you for coming out, but sadly, there are thousands of people that will not pay attention to these types of forums. And they're making voting decisions based on people that are buying their votes, essentially. So there's a number of things, but number one, we're getting ripped off by our government because the government is just spending us into oblivion, and then they're using that money on stuff that you and I would never approve of. I think that frustrates all of us. I think that's a bipartisan issue, especially here in a very conservative part of the country. The other big thing is communications. We've got to have better communications. I honestly would love it if I could just sit and not talk and just listen to each one of your stories about your family, your business, your life, your circumstances, and how the government is impacting you, because I think that would be more helpful. And then, of course, I agree with John that we ought to have term limits.
Very unfortunately, one of the things that's happened in our country, and this is history, and I think the facts bear me out, but you're also welcome to check this on your own. In 1979, there was a landslide election. Reagan trounced the Democrats. And what happened as a result thereof, evidently, is that there was a sort of a carved in stone agreement that under the table, nobody would talk about the money anymore. Well, what we would do, we would fight and bicker over social issues, and we've done a really good job of that for the 50 years. We've got inflammation and hate in this country that is thicker than 50 concrete walls. But the problem is, if you notice, our government has kept on spending and kept on spending. And we're at a place now where we're $40 trillion under. We're at a break point. We're losing this country, folks, and we have to break the mold. And I would insist, as your representative, that we start talking about the money. It's the responsibility of our candidates to balance the doggone budget. And somebody's got to figure out how, and there might be some real uncomfortable discussions up there. But you can't have one branch of government that has unlimited spending. We've got to take more control of our spending, and it might be some unpleasant moments, but I'll do it for you if you like me. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming out tonight. I would echo much of what's been said so far already. When I made the decision to run for Congress, this was this issue of corruption in our politics that really drove me to stand up and jump in the race. And we're living in very polarized times, so it's easy, very easy at times to lean into, you know, the tribalism of your team. I was really focused when I started the campaign on trying to find those things and build a campaign around the things that are really broken in DC, and folks here have mentioned several of those things. And so I launched my campaign on these kinds of anti-corruption reform packages, term limits, banning stock trading for members of Congress, campaign finance reform, the works. I would also mention that, you know, the question is about why Congress is so unpopular. This is certainly a part of it. I think another part of it is because for so long, this corruption has been out of control, and both major political parties in this country have gotten accustomed to the rules of that game and have, you know, built their own political apparatus, each of them respectively, around protecting their own interests, circling the wagons around their tribe, while both tacitly supporting the underlying foundational rot in the system. And so we've got to get after it. I appreciate the words from the other candidates here. I think there's real common ground here. Thank you.
It works. Well, thank you for inviting me. I am the only candidate who speaks with an accent, so pay attention. When I jumped into this race, I ran first time in 22, but yes, Congress is unpopular because they are usurping power which doesn't belong to them. But at the same time, people are not exercising the civic duties. If somebody is not performing as they're supposed to, they're not serving you, your needs, get them out. And for some reason, we have people in Congress who are there for 46 years. Why? Congress have basically abdicated its duties. And that's basically bottom line. But at the same time, I would agree with some of the statements that my running mates are saying. But again, we as a society, we have to step in, elevate ourselves, and again, we have to exercise our duties, not just the Congress, not just judicial, not executive, but we have the power. Let's use it.
Thank you, candidates. At this time, I just want to remind the candidates of the rule that we don't allow any political materials allowed to be displayed. So if we can move anything at this time, that would be greatly appreciated. Stuck them underneath the desk.
Do I pass this back down to John now?
To Favian, please.
To Fabian, okay.
Favian will be the next one.
Fabian.
Thank you. Okay. The next question. Immigration reform has been a prominent and highly debated campaign issue for Congress for nearly 4 decades. Speak up. Okay, let me restart. Immigration reform has been a prominent and highly debated campaign issue for Congress for nearly 4 decades. Immigrant labor has been heavily relied in our congressional district for over a century. Describe your position on the federal administration's expansion of immigration enforcement and what, if anything, you would do differently regarding immigration reform.
Thank you. So I grew up as a migrant farm worker. My parents, I'm second generation Mexican American. My parents were born in Michoacan, Mexico. And I was born in Illinois, and we were migrant farm workers growing up until we settled down here when I was in elementary school at Robertson. So the reason I bring that up is because that will give you an idea as to what my stance is. So my stance is that we need secure borders. I think everyone can agree on having secure borders, keeping our community safe. At the same time, we need to have a legal pathway to legal status for people that have been here, that have been contributing, paying their taxes, being part of our community. We need to formally integrate them and formally invite them in and welcome them to be part of our economy, to be part of our community. They already are, but we keep them in the shadows, and that just doesn't serve anyone. It doesn't serve our economy. It doesn't serve our community. As far as ICE, We need to retrain ICE and refocus them on what they were meant to do. In 2003, we started ICE to go after cartels, violent criminals. They were not meant to go and intimidate our communities and make it so that people felt unsafe going out, traveling with your passport. Thank you.
In our district, the primary financial provider and market is ag. Agriculture is extremely important. And we know the people that are working in ag, right? We understand that. For farmers, they understand that. I have friends that are farmers that have told me that they need the government to provide a process that is attainable, that is real, that can also provide them with the labor that they need in a way that is legal, rather than continuing to support a process that hasn't supported anyone. It doesn't work. During the Biden administration, it is reported that over 20 million undocumented people entered the country. And one thing I want to highlight is that 20 million Mexicans didn't come into the United States during his administration, okay? They came from everywhere, all over the world. So we need to make sure that our government has something in place, a plan and process to give people a viable, reachable alternative. We cannot continue to ignore it. I have zero tolerance for crime. I have zero tolerance for people that are breaking the law. However, I think that it's time that we have real conversations, real solutions, and provide a community that has already been here and it's working with a way to be able to be here legally.
Yeah, it's a tough question to answer quickly, so I won't repeat what some of the others have said here, but I will say that the conversation is really not about immigration reform, although there may be some opportunities to reform our immigration process. To me, the problem primarily is, why are we allowing our executive branch to subvert the law? And just go with me for a second. I've been to the border many times, and when Obama was in office, the border was open. It wasn't as open as it was when Biden was in office, but there was definitely a strong transition when President Trump was elected in 2016, where the borders closed, the flow stopped, and it was noticeably different, versus when Biden got into office. It was like a heyday, and there was a lot of people coming across the border like we've never seen before. So my question to you to this is to think about is, if we have a law that guides what we will do in regards to immigration, which we want, this is the best country in the world, we ought to have the best people coming here, we ought to, if we're going to open the doors to anybody or to the rest of the world, then we're not going to remain the best country in the world. We ought to have the best, most talented, smartest people coming here. And we ought to have them come here at rates that we can integrate them, right? So our country can still remain free, and our culture can remain, and things like that. And so what I think we ought to look at is, why do we allow the executive branch to subvert the law with regards to immigration, depending on who's in office? And that's not right. We ought to change that.
This is near and dear to me because I'm from the South, and I'm from West Texas, and I grew up hopping on both sides of the border. I've been a gringo going south and a gringo coming back home, and I've stood in line. I know the border well. It's a disgrace. For 250 years, both countries have said, nah, it's your problem, nah, it's your problem. And neither country has had the dignity to face the situation and said, we both got a problem, let's fix it. Takes a little bit of cooperation, that's all. Just using our pumpkin heads just a little bit. That border could be something of a Nobel Prize. They come across, everybody that comes across gets medically screened. The diseases are a big problem. In South Texas, we've got TB that can't be cured, that's come across. That's very important, folks. And then the next thing is, the people that make the screening come here to work. We can't do without them. We can't run agriculture without them. They put the food on our tables. They run our hotel system. They butcher our beef and do all our food processing. Give them a card so that when they're in trouble and they go to court, they have rights. They get treated fairly instead of messed over badly, and often in our justice system. And then, guess what? When they're sending money back home, tax it to pay for the border. Marvelous thing. And then on the other side, we got to quit shipping arms down there and quit having such a demand. If we run our schools right, drugs would go out of popularity. We got to take responsibility. Thank you.
Well, once again, a lot of valid points raised there. I agree with a lot of what Favian said. We need a process by which people who have been here for a time who are contributing, as also noted, is massive across our district and critical throughout our district, to have a legal pathway to some sort of permanent residency and eventually to citizenship. And we can do that while still maintaining, criminal pursuits of people who have broken the law. As it pertains, though, to reforms, as far as the current administration has taken their immigration policy, I think the president was elected in part on immigration. It was one of his best polling issues at the start of his term. That support has collapsed, I think, as the American public have watched how this administration has prioritized their resources. And we've seen American citizens targeted by ICE. We've seen homes entered without warrants. So obviously there is a huge overcorrection towards punitive and aggressive action on the part of this administration that needs to be reined way in. And we need to, we can take the secure border. Thank you, President Trump. But that is far beyond the actions that we've seen from ICE, far beyond anything that's acceptable. And we need to have a common sense conversation around providing those resources to folks. There's a bipartisan act that's been introduced in the House called the Dignity Act. I support that as a starting place for reforming our immigration system.
Well, I'm against whatever my predecessor said in here. We already have laws on the books. We just have to enforce them. I came to the United States. As you look at the guy who came here legally. I applied for visa, spent 2 years. I had to get a tuberculosis X-ray and some other requirements. I came to US. Within 1 year, I had an interview with immigration. At that time, it was INS. So, if you at that time, when I was told, if you seem to be a viable individual for the country that the country will benefit from, there was a mechanism, and there still is that same mechanism in the books, which can determine whether you're going to stay or you're going to go. When it comes to, and it seems like the debate is all the time about the people helping on the farms. Yes, we need to have some sort of a system in place where people can go to let's say US Embassy, US Consulate, apply for work permit. They come here for a specific amount of time, which again, those laws are on the books. They apply for that, they get work permit, they come here for 3 months, 6 months, and then after that they have to go back home. I don't see no reason why do we have to reinvent the wheel. Thank you.
Folks, I hope everybody's staying cool out there. I can see y'all fanning. It's hot. It's hot up here. Look, this is a country, and we have a right to control our border and who comes into our country. I've recently traveled between 2 countries in Africa, and they literally check to make sure you have the right immunizations before you travel from one to the other. So we should never have an open border. Now, I would quibble with describing it as an open border, but we'll cover that another day. But I want to say something. I was talking to a young lady the other day, and she said that it took 20 years and $100,000 to immigrate the right way. Folks, that's on SAT. And it is purposely stayed that way because the Democrats offered the Republicans immigration reform, and they declined. They wanted this to be a partisan issue. In our last question, we talked about why Congress is so unpopular. It might be because there's some asymmetry. One party wants you to think it doesn't work, and the other party keeps trying to fix it. That's what I'm here to do. Immigration should be fast, fair, and affordable. So, thank you.
Excellent. Mr. Duresky, if you could pass it down to Ms. Saaverdra. Perfect. Question number 3. Insurance coverage and access to health care in Congressional District 4 is disproportionately lower than the rest of Washington. What solutions do you offer to remedy CD4's health care challenges?
I actually work in healthcare, and so I'm very, very familiar with Medicaid and Medicare. I work with the population, I work with those families, I work with seniors, I work with veterans, and let me tell you, if there's anything that makes me a little sad, if there's anything that makes me sad, it's when I have to be talking with people that can't afford their healthcare treatment. They can't afford their medication. Many times I hear of people avoiding having to go to the doctor because they're so afraid of what it's going to cost. Are you kidding me? And yet, right now our social system it's imbalanced because there's people that have, for example, Medicaid, and they get everything covered at 100% limitlessly. How is that fair? When working Americans that are having to pay for their health care avoid going to the doctor because they're afraid they're not going to be able to afford it even if they have private health insurance. I think that is a problem. The entire system needs to be relooked. The entire system needs to be revamped. And I truly believe that Americans need to be first. Seniors, veterans, children, and anyone who's able-bodied that can work, then you got to go out there and get a job. Thank you.
I'm going to get Elpidia to speak for me. This is a great question, and I have a pretty amazing story in regards to this. Some of you may not appreciate my comments, but hopefully in context of my story, it'll make sense to you. But I was diagnosed with terminal cancer 26 years ago, and I didn't do conventional medical treatment because they told me I was going to die. And so I was basically forced out on the street to figure out what can I do to save my life. And basically the Maha movement today is really a lot of what I did in my own life. And so the part that you might not like me saying, but I'm just going to suggest it, is I think we can do a lot more for ourselves in terms of the things that we're eating, the ingredients that are in our foods that we're eating, the amount that we're eating, all that kind of stuff, I think will be very helpful. There's a bunch of other stuff that we can do just in terms of like funding rural health care, which we really have a lot of constraints on in this country. For example, if you want to add a hospital or if you want to remodel or add a wing or do something like that, you basically need congressional approval. Most people don't realize that, but we have a lot of constraints on that. And for a country that is incredibly wealthy, the most wealthy country in the world, I can't for the life of me figure out how we have one of the worst health results in terms of our own personal health. And so I hope that we could, do a better job of funding rural health care and making sure that people have access to, to the health care that they need. At the same time, I hope that we all do everything we can to stay as healthy as we can for ourselves.
Yeah, I think reason has to go into play here. There's no utopia. There's not going to be a silver bullet that solves and has a total, absolute health care for everybody forever. I don't think there's any such silver bullet. But on the other hand, we do need to focus more on our health care. Certainly, Jerrod has a point I agree with. We all have to take responsibility. I'm totally into that. I'm into organics. I'm going into have your own garden, make your own food. What we buy in the store is often junk and chemicals, and it'll kill you. That's the facts of life. And a lot of our medicine is also needs to be pared down. And of course, we got the pharmaceuticals that are trying to make money off of us, and they do a pretty darn good job. And I work for Medicaid and Medicare every day of the year, so I help people in medical therapeutic management. That's my job. So I work to save money everywhere I can, and there are many ways to save money there. So I would say that we have to take a reasonable approach. Certainly, I think our healthcare system needs to be streamlined. We can make it more efficient. And like her, I mean, it rips my heart out when I talk to people, particularly Hispanic people that don't have enough money. And it really hurts. And you see older people that have worked in the fields all their lives, and they don't have enough money for health care, the meds. So I'm very sympathetic about that. And I think we can do more instead of having a war every other year.
Well, I don't think it's any secret that the private health insurance companies and lobbies spend a lot of time and money lobbying our elected officials to keep the system effectively right where it is. That's a big part of the problem. So if you look around the world, there are a lot of other developed, wealthy nations who have figured out how to build systems that provide universal coverage for their citizens. We should do the same. We tout that we're the greatest country in the world. We're the richest country in the world. We spend trillions of dollars overseas waging wars. We spend trillions of dollars in tax breaks to billionaires, and yet we deprioritize this issue decade after decade after decade. We can do better. Universal health care is possible. We see it elsewhere in the world. Let's get after it.
Reminder from the audience to please refrain from applause at this time.
And again, I'm going to take a little bit different stance on my predecessors. In 2020, my wife was diagnosed with cancer. We went for 4 years with chemo, surgeries, immunotherapy, and just a couple of years ago, my daughter who at that time was 25, was also diagnosed with cancer. She just had a surgery on June 4th, because insurance companies, they said, oh, she's too young to have this kind of a problem, okay? But the issue is that we have the best technology in the world, but at the same time, everything is like being approved through the commissioner of the state. The commissioner approves what the insurance company can and cannot do. At the same time, we have a bloated bureaucracy in the hospitals. At the same time, I can tell you there is what's called the Oklahoma Surgery Center. They don't accept any insurance. But if you want to get your knee replaced or hip replaced, you pay them $5,000 and they'll take care of that. That's all it costs. Hospitals are refusing to publish pricing. We have to basically force them, and if I get to Congress, then I will basically implement that's you have to publish your pricing so people can know. And also the insurance companies cannot deny treatments just because somebody is this age or that age or whatever the reason they have. Thank you.
I think it might have been Winston Churchill who said, America does the right thing after exhausting all other possibilities. Check my work. So let me say it concisely and clearly. The time has come for universal health care of some form. And listen, I've been all throughout the district. I've talked to hospital administrators. I've met with patients. I've met with people whose Affordable Care Act premiums really have doubled and tripled. That's a real thing that's happening to real people. Imagine getting an extra $500 bill or $1,000 bill a month. Not too many of us here could afford that. If we don't fix Medicaid and Medicare reimbursement rates, the rural hospitals all through this district are in genuine danger. And it is not optional to fix it. So that's going to be something that you can count on the Democrats working on very hard as soon as we get there this coming January. Thank you.
So at the beginning of this year, my dad was actually perfect health. He was really strong, and he suffered a severe stroke. And this is something he didn't plan for. It's something, he was healthy. He was eating organic. He was doing what he had to. But as we speak, he's still in the hospital. and we're helping him navigate Medicare, Medicaid. I've been learning more than I ever would want to learn about this. And so the reason I bring that up is because this is a very pressing issue for me and my family, but it's a very pressing issue for our district. Our district is going to suffer from the cuts that came down from the big beautiful bill. So we need to do something to make up for that. So we need to find short-term, near-term solutions. So we need to make up for the cuts on Medicaid. We need to find ways to get our medication costs down. We need to do everything we can. Monopolies for pharmaceutical companies, that's something we need to do away with. We also need to get everyone to the table to figure out how we make our health care system better and our health insurance coverage better. As politics, my time's up, but thank you.
Okay, just a reminder, no applause or booing or chanting, but I appreciate the enthusiasm. We appreciate it. Okay. Question 4, the lowest level of snow coverage and snowpack for Washington for decades in the western United States has contributed to the 4th consecutive year of drought in the Yakima Valley. This has also happened on a global scale with increased environmental catastrophes and resource scarcity. Please share your thoughts on the topic and what, if anything, Congress can do to address the issue.
Yeah, so if you didn't hear, the question had to do with snowpack, and I think you're kind of leaning into climate change. The big issue for here, and I'm not going to get into that because I think I totally disagree with most of the climate change rhetoric. If you look at the history of the world, there's about a 140-year cycle where you see the temperatures going up and coming down. I was in Washington, D.C. just a few days ago, and it was 170 degrees at least. So almost as hot as it is in here tonight. One of the big issues we have in this area with regards to water is we don't have storage for the Yakima Valley. We don't have enough storage. Like Rosa was shut down for 3 weeks just not too long ago. But yet in the spring we have just massive, massive amounts of water, flowing down the Yakima River that we could be capturing in storage. Further up in the district, for those of you who don't know, this district goes all the way to Canada. It covers all or part of 8 counties. And we have the Columbia Basin Project, which makes up about 650,000 acres. It was originally, 85 years ago, was intended to irrigate about 1.2 million acres. And so we're only just over halfway in terms of the promises that we've made. And so we have farmers that are, they're drilling wells. They started at a couple hundred feet, then 1,000, then 2,000, and now they're down literally a mile. Running these massive engines pulling water up out of there just because we haven't finished, the Columbia Basin Project. And so, and I'll just say on top of that, we need to bring more money back to this district. We need a congressman that's going to be able to build relationships and bring more of the money that we're spending. We're only getting about 60% of what we give back in projects and in funding for our district.
Will they ever learn? Right there is our solution, folks. You split it out, you burn hydrogen, and it turns into water. We could get off oil. Imagine that. In 1800, they invented the first hydrogen car. Isn't that something? How patents do have an effect. In 1836, some guys out in Michigan got tired of harvesting wheat, so they invented a combine. Before the Civil War, guess what? Combines were commonplace all over the country. Guess when it was when we invented the cotton picker? About 1936, an old boy from West Texas. So if we would use our heads, we could save the climate, we could save ourselves from wars, we could save everything. We'd just be wise with our resources. So yeah, I'm into water, I'm into agriculture, and I'm into saving the planet, and I'm into industry. What's wrong with the hydrogen car? Guess what? You could run it without authority from the federal government. Imagine that. Vote for me and be free. Let's use our heads and get out from under government. I mean, government's not the answer, and we can save our planet just by burning this instead of hydrocarbons that are filthy and pollute the planet. and everything else. So let's use our heads, folks. It's put there for a reason.
For those of you who don't know, John is a big hydrogen fan. We've heard a lot from him about this topic on the campaign trail. Yeah, the low snowpack is a real problem, and it is a real consequence of a change in climate. It's not only impacting water usage throughout the region, but it's also going to impact, as we've already started to see, our fire season. Fire seasons have been getting longer and longer, drier and drier, hotter and hotter. So as far as water usage, we need to make some smart investments in infrastructure that can help us manage and prolong that water infrastructure, whether that's converting open-ended canals to buried piped canals where we can, covering other canal infrastructure with solar panels. Other states and countries have done this and seen dramatic losses, or a reduction in the losses from evaporation. So, we can see 10 to 20% gains just from covering our canals. Jerrod mentioned the Columbia Basin Project. A lot of miles of canals running around in Grant County that we could cover at the same time, generating a lot of clean, renewable energy to tackle the root cause of the problem. So it's multifaceted problem, incredibly important problem, but there are tools at our disposal and infrastructure. We can make the investments in being wise stewards of our water resources. Thank you.
Well, let me put my engineering hat on. Yes, we have a problems with the lack of snowpack. At the same time, we have a problem with storage. But at the same time, we need to provide the water to farmers, to grow whatever they grow. But if you come to Tri-Cities and throughout the whole, like the eastern part of Washington, you've got stuff, people have lawns around the house, everything is nicely irrigated. In my house, I've got 100 sprinklers. Each one of them runs in 1.5 gallons per minute. So if I run the system for 30 minutes, that's 4,500 gallons per day. Do this times 180 days per year. That's 810,000 gallons of water. This is basically, some of that goes to the grass, some of that evaporates. Some of the climate changes we have, it's because of the water vapor in the air. Now, am I the only one like that in the Tri-Cities? No, there's thousands of other people with the same situation. So what I would recommend, actually I'm doing this, I purchased a very high-tech irrigation system that I'll be able to cut my water consumption by as much as 90%. And we need to look at conservation, not just saying that we need, more snowpack, because that's like Jerrod said, this is cyclical, and we just have to go through that. Thanks.
Let me tell a real quick story. In about 1996, I was flying back from Bahrain from a short deployment with the B-1 bombers. And we were flying over the southern tip of Greenland. And I happened to be looking out the window, and there were these beautiful blue rivers and little blue lakes of most beautiful aquamarine color you've ever seen. And a flight attendant walks up to me and stands next to me, and we're looking down, and she says, "I've been flying this route for 20 years. And 20 years ago, this was ice. There was no blue, there were no mountains, it was ice cap all the way. Climate change is real. It will take all of society to fix it, and we have to do everything we can to fix it. Windmills, solar, small modular nuclear, everything, all of society to turn this around." Thank you.
So whether we think that climate change was caused by us or if it's just a cycle, the reality is that it's here. This is a 4th year in a drought, right? I don't think anyone disagrees with that. I think our farmers are, very aware of that. So I've been studying our current representative, Dan Newhouse. I've been studying the committees that he's on. I've been studying the bills that he's been advocating for. I've been studying the kind of the back and forth and the compromises that he's made. And I don't think he gets enough credit. He's done a lot of really good things for our capacity here. I think there's more to be done. And my goal would be to continue what he has done as far as when it comes to water. Our district relies on water. I think we need to be responsible when we build up the capacity for water. Our reservoirs, there's some work there that's very close to making it better, to making long-term storages, better for our farmers. But more needs to be done, and we need to bring everyone to the table. We need to include the farmers. We need to talk to the people in the community, the experts about the environment, our Native American community. We need to bring everyone to the table and figure this out. I think we need, whether we like it or not, I think we benefit from renewable power. I mean, hydropower makes up half of our power grid, so we need to keep that going as well.
I think that this is a topic that we can go back and forth arguing on who's causing the problem. We know that there's a problem. We know that this is impactful, especially to our district, because again, the primary industry that produces in our valley is ag. However, as a Latina, I have to admit that I don't have all the solutions. And most people that will say that they do are lying. They're lying to your face. However, there is something that in my culture we're really good at, and that's communicating. I love to talk. I love to talk to people. I think you guys can see that. I have no problem asking the people that know, the farmers, asking the people that do the research. The solutions are out there. We just need to have robust plans in process to begin to put those things in place to protect water, to ensure that we have enough of it, to reduce its waste. We need to begin to have enough funding in our district for our farmers to ensure that those systems that are out there to protect farmlands, to protect water, regardless of the way our environment is going, we have to ensure that we are planning things to have in place to protect the water that we have and ensure that our farmers have what they need in order to keep their crops growing and healthy.
Thank you, candidates. I think the next question hits home as we're sitting here in a Grange Hall this evening. Agricultural and food processing are the primary economic drivers of Congressional District 4 and are facing unprecedented challenges. If elected, what will you do to ensure our agricultural viability? And we'll go ahead and start with Mr. Hughs.
Well, I think one of the main things that any businesses face is, in today's world, is heavy regulation. We need to set a priority for our ag, particularly our farmers and ranchers who are at the far end of it. But we also need to take care not to over-regulate our food industry. Now, having said that, we need clean food and we need to keep it clean. Other than that, I would say the other thing that I think we skip over time and time again is tax breaks. If you want an industry to grow, get off the taxes. Give it some tax breaks, give it some tax exemptions, and that's a great way to spawn and stimulate business. Tax is a power to destroy. And that's about the best answer I have there. I think we do have some really good industry in this area, and we become full circle, 360, and that's excellent, and we need to keep that going. Thank you.
Yeah, so there has been, over the last few decades, a pretty massive amount of consolidation, corporate consolidation in the input supply sector for the agricultural industry, also in the distribution sector for the agricultural industry, and even within the industry itself, which makes it incredibly hard for farmers to keep up with rising prices and lower sale prices. They're often at the mercy of commodities markets, which they have no control over. And at the same time, Americans want to see low prices at the grocery store. So I feel like we have this conundrum and we go round and round with this conversation. We want cheap food available to American citizens. That's a good thing. We also want farmers to be able to have a viable business model. In my view, that means we need to start exploring other ways to make investments into agriculture that aren't just cash bailouts, which has been the approach for the last decade. I would support making a lot of investments into the practice of agrivoltaics. People may not be familiar with that, but that's the idea of putting solar, installing solar onto agricultural land, not to replace the agricultural output, but to install it so they can coexist alongside the agricultural output. Find that balance for different kinds of crops. How much can we generate, how much energy can we generate while keeping our food supply there? And that gives farmers additional options to diversify their revenue, and once again also provides another channel for clean energy across our district. Thanks.
So the way how I see this, like looking at Tri-Cities, is that the first issue what we have is labor. Second issue we have is overregulation. Just like what I said in here, is taxes are killing some of the factories. But also keep in mind that many of the small businesses, like a family-run businesses, are being swallowed by large corporations. And that is, once a large corporation takes over, they will never lower prices. The CEO has to make a $68 million salary, and its CFO has to make whatever millions. It's beyond explanation. But the fact is that taxes, overregulation, labor, and cost of energy, that's the most important aspects of those food producers. Now, here in this state, in Eastern Washington, we have dams. We have and in Tri-Cities we have the nuclear power, Columbia generating power plant. But we have to look at this not just from a point of view like okay, this is a regime that we have to change. No, we have to be flexible, and we have to basically provide these people with the better conditions to produce food.
So I've been up and down the district, and I've talked to farmers all around, agricultural groups. And one orchard has told me essentially that it cost about $200 to get a box of apples, but they're only getting paid $150 for that box of apples. That math doesn't math. There are a bunch of problems that Congress can fix, that is their job to fix, and they have abdicated that job. Tariffs is the first thing. What agricultural people, what the orchardists need is stability in their markets. And that means that we need to fix the tariffs so that they have a stable, predictable tariff environment. As far as regulations, this is a very subtle thing, but I actually talked to an association that said, some of the places we export to want to know that our fruit is safe and is grown in a certain way. They want regulations. Of course, we need to reform, we have a labor problem as well, and we absolutely need to reform the H-2A system and make it cheap, make it inexpensive and fair for the growers so they can afford it. And finally, the war. The war has driven up input costs for all of these people, fertilizer, fuel, and everything. And again, we didn't ask for that war. It happened. It happened without our consent. Thank you.
So the first thing is we need to give our farmers access to fair markets, free trade. We need to let them compete. We need to let them, and the way we do that is through tariffs. So tariffs is a big one. Congress is the only one that has the power. The Supreme Court actually finally affirmed that Congress is the only one that should be imposing tariffs. And tariffs can be a tool that can actually help our local producers, but it can also, in the way that they've been used, they've been really hurting our farmers, I think even more than us as consumers, because they get it on both ends. They get it when they buy the supplies they need, and when they sell their produce, they don't get the prices that they need. The other part is that we have to give some credit to Representative Newhouse. He made some efforts. He didn't actually accomplish a lot of it just because, it's politics, but he has been making a lot of efforts as far as the guest worker program and immigration in general. He didn't get very far. I think now it would be different because it's urgent. We need to get all hands on deck, find any type of solution that we can, and make it so that our economy, which is the backbone of our economy, is ag, and we need to find any way that we can to make it work.
Agriculture and manufacturing. It's extremely important, as we've heard. We all know that, and every single person here has in some way or another been impacted by that industry. Now, when it comes to what is necessary in order to ensure that the farmers and the manufacturers have what they need legislators that are going to keep them at the front of the line, right? They need to ensure that they have people that are aware of their struggles. What I have heard from farmers directly is this. Do you know that we lose about 5,000 farms a year in the United States? 5,000 farms a year close. The average age of a farmer is 60. 60 years old is the average age of a farmer. And they don't have people behind them coming up, preparing to take their place. So what is being done in order to ensure, how are we educating our youth? How are we educating the younger generation to ensure that we are going to have that food supply for our own country so that we don't have to begin to be looking at other sources such as importing? Cost is extremely expensive, and labor costs. Cost for supplies. Sometimes supplies get bottlenecked. Things are breaking down. There's farmers that are having their wires being cut on their farms. We need to ensure that those farmers are being supported so that they can ensure that they're being able to produce their produce and that they have the support that they need to be able to keep their farms running. Thank you.
Statistically, about over 60%, almost 2/3 of the people in the room are either business owners or they work in finance in the business. And just imagine for a second going into a business where you had no control over your input costs and you had no control over how much your product was going to sell for. So you have all these costs coming at you, and then how much you're getting for your product or your produce is not under your control either. The farmers, it is literally scary what's happening in this in our region right now. Private equity is coming in, just buying up farms in mass. It's pretty crazy to watch. Obviously, we need less regulations. In terms of solutions, one of the big problems, and Jacek mentioned this, is labor. We have federal programs that get stacked with state programs. I suggest we separate those. We give the farmers and give the ag community the ability to choose a federal program or a state program, and by creating that competition, we force our government to give us better programs for our farmers. Right now, the federal government can do whatever they want to do, Olympia can do whatever they want to do, and everybody who owns a business is subject to those rules and laws and regulations, and it's ridiculous, and it's killing us, and that's why I say they're ripping us off. Another big thing is local processing, and there's lots of examples of this, but one of the things is, if you think about a lot of the stuff that's grown here, it isn't grown and produced in a way that's actually usable for us. It ends up getting shipped off somewhere else, and so all that processing and the majority of the profits ends up going somewhere else as well. The other thing I'll end with is, and a lot of people don't realize this, the Farm Bill, everybody heralds it, 97% of the Farm Bill goes to EBT and SNAP. So where is that going? It's going to the manufacturers, not going to the producers. You ready?
Yes, so.
Okay, we have time for one extra question. So the question will be, According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the poverty rate in Congressional District 4 is 15.8%, the highest of the 10 districts in Washington. Another 28% of people in CD4 earn above the poverty level but below the district's basic cost of living. What remedies do you propose to address this issue?
Yeah, I would kind of piggyback on the last answer and the topic of the last question, which is, agriculture being the current backbone of our economy. I think, a big challenge that we have in this district is that farmers are facing these kinds of challenges that we all just spoke to, but that has been the dominant industry here, and it hasn't left room for other kinds of innovation or businesses to come in, entrepreneurial efforts. And so I think there's an opportunity, and bringing it back to my last answer here, I think if we make some durable investments into agricultural technologies of the 21st century, not only something like agrivoltaics, but precision agriculture, drone technologies. I spoke with a young man who worked on a farm in the 5th district technically, but we share a lot of common DNA between our two districts. And he was speaking about how the farm that he worked for was looking into acquiring drones so that they could reduce their pesticide costs or whatever it was that they were spraying. But it's not a widespread practice, and there's room to improve our agricultural economies, innovate in that space. And that innovation will also, I think, create opportunities for new operators, entrepreneurs to rise up and be servicing some of these new sectors as they emerge. So we've got to make the investment and not just rely and cross our fingers that the current engine of our economy is going to, recover miraculously.
We have to have our jobs. That's basically bottom line. And the federal government or the state government, they don't create any jobs. The private sector does. And if we invest in farms, if we help farmers, they'll create some jobs. If we invest in some industries, like for example, everybody's been talking about why housing is so expensive in District 4, and it is. Why a stick-built house costs, let's say, $500,000 nowadays? And it does. In Richland, my daughter just bought herself a house. It's a starter home, 1,400 square feet. It's $485,000. Okay. Why can't we invest in something new? Like, for example, taking the straw from the fields and producing building materials with that. Is it possible? Yes, it is. But we have to have an infrastructure. We have to have basically get the government to get out of the way. They will have to provide like a low interest, or maybe like a zero APR loans to people who are willing to start businesses. And that's the only way of basically getting this whole district out of poverty, is not by sticking a hand out, by producing something, being the most valuable district in pretty much in this whole state, maybe even in the nation. Thank you.
Since about 1980, we've seen the transfer of about $50 trillion from the bottom 90% of wage earners in this country to the top 10%. You really want to solve this problem? We solve it at the federal level with tax policy. You know what we do? We raise the minimum wage, which hasn't been raised since 2009. You know what we do? We make unions stronger. In the 70s, union membership was at 25%. Today, it's less than 10. This was a deliberate, intentional effort that took decades to get this way. They rigged the system to make all of your lives harder. They did it through tax policy, and it's time to do that tax policy differently. There's a lot of things we can do. I would also say there are real things we can do in this community that we're already doing, which is the internships and the technician apprenticeships for the unions. We have a bunch of these in Tri-Cities. It's a very big deal. We should keep funding those. And we shouldn't be cutting dollars going to Hanford. Those are some of the great Some of the best jobs, they're an economic growth engine for the whole region, as well as agriculture. We've already talked about that. That's obviously a place where we can make real improvements. We've got a lot of work to do here, folks. None of it's going to be easy. There's no pat answers, and I don't want anybody up here to think that there is a pat answer. This is hard stuff. Thank you for the time.
No more federal taxes for anyone that makes under $60,000. So that'll be the first bill that I'll actually introduce into Congress. There are Republican bills that are similar to this that have been proposed before, and Democrat bills. But so if we do it at this number, it makes it so our income tax revenue goes down by just 3%. We can make up that 3% if we just didn't pay around those $300 billion. That's about 5%. We'll find other ways to make up for that 3%. But what that will do, it'll make it so we can reform the IRS and actually cut about 20% of the workforce in the IRS and actually modernize it. So it'll make it so that we can save about $4 to $8 billion a year. And it'll make it so we talk about different ideas on how to make it more affordable, how to reduce gas. But if we don't tax people about $5,000 to $10,000 depending on your credits and everything, that stays in your pocket. That stays in the community. That stimulates the economy. It stays right here. We've done this. Our country is 250 years old. We've only been taxing people since 1913. We found a way to make it work before that, and we did big things before 1913. So no more federal taxes for people making under $60,000.
I think there's a lot that can be done here locally within the state. Washington State is about 30% more expensive to live in than the national average. That's a problem, and that's something that can be addressed here locally. We can make things more affordable for people here, starting on the state level. We don't even need to look at the federal level. Having legislation that mandates a certain amount of minimum wage is good for many people. However, we also need to consider that when that was done within the ag industry, many farm working families lost about 30% of their annual wages overnight. Many farm workers went over to Olympia to fight that legislation because their families saw an instant drop in their annual income. They were making a minimum wage, but they were making less money because the farmers, in order to be able to balance their costs, ended up giving them fewer hours to work. I was a farm worker. I grew up in cutting asparagus in the field, picking cherries, and in Mount Vernon, cutting strawberries and in the cucumbers. I understand how that is. But within the ag industry, people want to work during the season in order for them to make money. So we have to be really careful how we address these issues. We need to support our farmers. We need to support students so that they can go to school and get an education, because that's how I got out of poverty. And we need to ensure that we're looking for ways to support the industries that keep District 4 alive.
When I was 6 months old, my parents bought a home. When I was a kid, my parents bought a home with 6 months' salary, half a year's salary. When I was in my early 20s, I bought a home with 2 years' salary. Today, my kids in their 20s are looking at 7 to 10 years' salary in order to buy a home. That's not the American dream. It's time for us to relight the American dream. And one of the biggest ways we can do that is, as I said earlier, stop the stupid spending. The government has got so much waste, fraud, and abuse, and again, this is bipartisan. I don't think any of us want to see all this waste, fraud, and abuse. We don't mind paying some taxes to cover some important things that we need, but not a lot of this craziness that's going on. So we need to provide incentives too. A capitalist system is by definition an incentive. If people know that if they do well, they can get rich, that's an incentive. The problem in this country is not our ability to make money, our ability to produce revenue. Our problem is the government is taking too much of it. And if you talk to any business owner, that's exactly what they'll say. They'll say, yeah, I can bring in the money, but the government is taking too much of it. If we deregulate, that brings investment. When you have investment, that means you have new jobs and job opportunities in the area. If you decentralize, then that reduces regulations. And so I'm huge on deregulation and decentralization. We have to pull things out of Washington, D.C. We have to pull things out of Olympia and bring them back to our home base here.
It's a big one for me, folks. I remember your U.S. history. I'm John Boy Walton. In the 1930s, we had the New Deal. And from the 30s to the 60s, we protected the middle class. In 1970, the needle got pointed towards the rich. In 1980, that needle got welded into place. And today, there's about 6 people that own everything. And then there's you and me. And the other thing we did in 1970 is, we got to have oil instead of something that might make us free, right? So we went to Saudi Arabia and we got on we let them bank the dollar on the barrel of oil. And if we lose that, guess what, Americans? You're poor instantly. Your money is based on a barrel of oil. And the other thing, with our debt, we are in trouble. And I can't say that hard enough. I could yell and scream and flap. Our economic system is red hot. We're in severe danger of losing our whole country. And right now, the economy is a K value. It's the poor, the poor, the poor, and the rich, it goes to the rich. We've eliminated the middle class. We got to come home. We got to get control of that government. We've been spending, we borrow from countries until there's no tomorrow and throw it out the gun barrel. It's not working. $40 trillion down. We can't even count that much money. We can't even pay the interest on it. Now, come on, folks. We're at the end. And we got to fix it. And soon.
Thank you, everyone, for the questions. We're going to move to the rapid fire round. Preston is handing out cards to all the candidates. As a reminder, they have both a yes and a no on either side of the card, and they're going to hold up their answer as we get going. Do you mind if I take the first question? Are you in favor of the Save America Act? Are you in favor of the Save America Act?
Do you consider Israel's military actions in Gaza to be a genocide? Do you consider Israel's military actions in Gaza to be a genocide?
Candidates, as a reminder, as it was shared in the beginning, candidates have the option of not sharing an answer. Here's the next question. We ask for silence in the room, please, at this time. Do you support the war in Iran?
Do you support changes to the Supreme Court, such as term limits, increasing the number of justices, or binding ethics codes?
Would you vote to restore SNAP benefits?
Do you support transitioning to a universal single-payer healthcare system?
Next question. Should those with addiction who are experiencing homelessness be required to complete drug treatment programming before receiving housing?
Should members of Congress and the cabinet be banned from making individual stock trades while they're in office?
That first universe, there we go. Would you support a pathway to legal status for undocumented agricultural workers living in our district?
Should local law enforcement be mandated to assist federal immigration deportations?
Should local law enforcement be mandated to assist in federal immigration deportations? Next question. Would you advocate for federal investment in modernizing the Yakima River Basin irrigation infrastructure?
Should billionaires exist?
Would you vote to protect agricultural producers from retaliatory tariffs?
Should the United States increase military and humanitarian support to the Ukraine?
Next question. Do you support thinning and controlled burns on federal forest lands to reduce wildfire risk?
Okay. Is the United States a Christian nation?
Okay. Are you in favor of the U.S. Postal Service lifting the ban on mailing handguns? You want me to repeat the question? Are you in favor of the U.S. Postal Service lifting the ban on mailing handguns?
Okay, don't get too loud at this one. Should the remaining Epstein files be released? Well, okay. Are you in favor of large-scale data centers being built in our congressional district?
Well, that concludes our rapid-fire questions. Thank you, candidates, for your answers, and thank you, audience. It is now time for closing statements. You each have 1 minute to wrap up and provide any final thoughts. Again, there will be a yellow card when 15 seconds remain and a red card when time is expired. We will continue in the order that the candidates in which you are selected. So, Mr. Kobiesa, you're the first to do your closing statement. Do you have a question? Mr. Hughes? 1 minute.
Okay, so here I am. As you can see, I'm different than everybody else. And probably I have ruffles of feathers. And good. That's my intention. I am not going to bow to anybody. I am not going to try to smooch somebody. I am not going to do anything which is beyond what I know and my own beliefs. And something also which is beyond, I would say, faith. Not maybe necessarily, I'm not referring to religion, but I'm talking about my own faith in something. So I basically told some of my friends do you feel like you're going to get elected? I said, no, I'm speaking my mind. So many people, they don't like that. They don't like direct answers. But that's what I will, if I go to Congress, that's what you're going to get. Thank you.
$60 seconds, really? Okay, thanks to Indivisible, thanks to the Grange, thanks for the League of Women Voters, do I have that right? Thank you for all the volunteers that made this happen, it was awesome. Thanks to all of you for staying out here, it's hot. And you missed a terrible Mariners game, they lost in extra innings, sorry. Real quickly, I just want to say as my close, I want to be clear that I am running to represent all of the people of this district. And that I take an oath, I've lived under the oath of office for 37 years. That oath is not to a man, it's not to a party, it is to you, it is to the people of this district. And I will continue to serve under that oath. The primary's coming up, guys. You see the names that are going to be on it. I think you should vote for somebody that's in this room and bothered to show up to be with you. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you so much for being here. I think a lot of us have been very frustrated with what's been happening. Some of us have thought about moving to Canada or Mexico. But I think we have something very special here that is worth fighting for. And I'm going to ask you, whether you vote for me or for one of these other candidates, I'm going to ask you to keep doing what you're doing, to keep showing up. Democracy only works if you keep showing up. If you don't keep showing up and don't keep talking to your neighbors, to that aunt or uncle that you don't always agree with, but you try to make an effort to find some common ground and be respectful. If we don't keep doing that, democracy does not work, does not keep going. And we also need to keep democracy. We don't want kings, but we also don't want to swing to the other extreme. We don't want communism. We don't want socialism. As an independent, I'm going to listen to you. Please check out favianvalencia.com. I need volunteers, so please come find me. I have stickers, and I think I have the best swag. So thank you guys for being here.
First of all, I'd like to thank everyone that came out. I think it's extremely important that we are informed voters. At the end of the day, I'm going to remind you that it's not the person with the biggest war chest that is necessarily the best candidate. I'm running my campaign on that I am powered on by the people and not the purse. I'm not asking for your money, I'm asking for your vote. And if you don't like the work that I do, then you can vote me out in 2 years. That's the awesomeness of our voting system. We have an opportunity to bring in change, someone that's going to be dedicated and committed to this district. Also keep in mind, a lot of these questions were very hot topic questions, and we understand that we want to know. If you're looking for the perfect candidate, you're not going to find him here. They don't exist. They're not in government even now. But what I'm asking you to look at is, who is the person that's going to be looking out for your best interests as a whole? At the end of the day, even in Congress, the whole is the one that decides, and we need people there that are willing to push back when it's necessary. Thank you.
We as candidates get almost daily right now, we're getting surveys from all kinds of different organizations and people. And part of the reason why I decided to come to this is the best questions that I got by far were from the Indivisible group. And so obviously they have lots of differences in terms of like how we think or whatever, but I was really impressed with that and very impressed tonight with the crowd, and I'm very appreciative of that. I will tell you that this political space is super nasty. I do not like it at all. If I'm blessed enough to be elected and chosen by you to be your next representative, I'll tell you, and I've told a lot of people this, I will never campaign again. I will not do anything negative on any other candidates, and I will run basically on two things. What have I done for you, and what am I going to do, or what are my plans that I want to do for you? And so, that's what I'm going to run on, because it is so ruthless. It is ridiculous. Finally, I did bring some hats, and since we're at the end, if you'd like a hat, be happy to give you one tonight. And God bless you. Thanks for coming out.
Hi, my name's John Hughs. Thank you for coming. Thanks for enduring with us. www.hughesforcongress.com. I'm a member of the U.S. Supreme Court Bar. I'm a member of the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office Bar. I almost finished med school, but couldn't thanks to Mr. Obama. And I'm highly educated. You have 50 years of preparation here. And I'll give you everything I have. I'm highly prepared for this position. I've lived and worked in D.C. already. We're in a lot of trouble. Mein Kampf has already been written. The author is Alex Karp. These people are serious, folks. This title of this book is The Theological Republic. Now, please, Americans, take note. That's not the constitutional republic. That is the theological republic. And these guys mean business, and they're going to take us over in about 30 months. So please, get off your benches and be active. And also, our federal spending, as we spoke, is out of control, and I'll do everything I can to stop that and bring back the American dollar. Thank you, and God bless.
I won't hold you all hostage any longer. My name is Devin Poore. Thanks everyone for coming out. My website, devinforlaw.com. Check it out. Come talk to me after if you have more questions. Thanks everyone.
All right, this brings us to the end of the forum. Let's have a round of applause for the candidates and the organization and you guys. And while I have you all here, this isn't a part of my script, but I really want to thank Angie Gerard for putting this all together. Clap for her and embarrass her all you want. We hope you've learned more about each and every candidate on the stage and are prepared to vote when your ballot arrives. They should get there on July 17th, and they are due by August 4th. Please go out and vote and encourage everybody you know to do so. Now we have refreshments, drinks in the other room.